call to order the October 2nd business meeting of the Littleton City Council. Will you please call the roll?
Mayor Brinkman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Valdez.
Present.
Councilmember Cole.
Here. Don't. Wants to be here.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Here.
Councilmember Elrod.
Here.
Councilmember Fay.
Here.
And Councilmember Schlachter.
Here.
Okay, will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You're there, man.
Pat, will you make sure Peggy's vote is neutral?
Not all.
Her vote is neutral.
Her
Vote.
vote. That hardly took more than 5 minutes right there.
Council, are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, I do see that there has been a correction made on ordinance 35, page 2, line 18, section 5, paren B. We have that correction at the dais. So that would be the only content change. Seeing no other changes, we'll approve the agenda as is. Public comment, I need the sign up, please. If you wish to address City Council, we ask that you have please signed up on the speaker form in the back of the room. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. The City Council is not authorized by the Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take action at the meeting on any issue raised by the public comment that is not part of our agenda this evening. We will refer matters to staff to obtain additional information and report back as appropriate. Okay. Jim Mascalo.
Jim Mascolo.
Could you spell your last name for me, please?
Mascolo. Okay. One constant refrain of the city in the 8125 South Park issue has been that we, the residents of South Park, don't understand zoning. And maybe we don't, but similarly, we don't believe the city understands leadership. Here's how leadership in this issue might have worked. There would have been a yearly review conducted by the city to assess the sustainability or the suitability of all zoning throughout the city. 2, this review would have discovered the unsuitability of the zoning in place in South Park, given the mix of schools, elderly care facilities, residential housing, etc. 3, the area would have been rezoned by now after at least 20 annual reviews. 4, in the case of business which sought to move into an incompatible area, such as the case in question, the city would have been forthcoming in notifying citizens and would, short of hundreds of citizen complaints, have organized public meetings. Instead, this seems to be how the city handled this issue. 1, there seems to have been no general citywide annual zoning review process. 2, there quite possibly was no initial review of the particular permit application and certainly no review for compatibility. 3, the city did not even put the relevant permit documents on its website until members of our board brought this up with the city. And 4, when a group of citizens found out about the particular permit, the city had to be forced into a public meeting, which it tightly controlled. And 5, now the city administration hasn't responded to a request from our homeowners association to set up a working task force to deal with issues and complaints. The city's many mistakes throughout this process have led us to a situation which could cause irreparable injury to an entire group of residents. Given the city's failure of oversight, we ask the council to begin immediately an investigation of the city's zoning process, the community development department, and the city's manager's role in this mess. It may be time that this council also begins to ask what real leadership would have looked like in this situation and why it wasn't there when Littleton residents needed it. The Highline Crossing Board is still waiting for a response from Mr. Ralph. If a child or anyone else in this area is hurt because of this shooting range and gun store were allowed to move in way too close to houses and schools, Everyone will suddenly understand what real leadership would have looked like.
Thank you. Christoph Heinrich?
Yeah, my name is Christoph DeMont Heinrich, and I'm a resident at 1644 West Canal Court in Highland Crossing co-housing. And I'm coming here as often as I need to mark the problem that we have in the zoning in South Park. I recently wrote an email to City Manager Ralph expressing my continued opposition to the proposed gun range in South Park, and my belief that the city's inappropriate zoning is largely to blame. Part of Mr. Ralph's response was the following: if the city tried to take action, then the city would be liable for damages, attorney's fees, plus each council member who would vote for such an action would be subject to personal liability. What could be clearer? The city quite simply doesn't want to be sued. However, although the city doesn't want to be sued, the city's quite all right with us, who had nothing to do with the city's zoning negligence, being sued. The city doesn't want liability. However, they're fine with having to spend our limited resources and having to fight because of the city's zoning errors. The city doesn't want liability, but they're not worried about our property values. The city doesn't want to be sued, but they seem to be okay with us and our children's safety being endangered. Is this the city's idea of leadership? Hiding behind zoning and letting its citizens take the bullet for its mistake. We need leadership from our city, leadership that acknowledges the city's zoning mistake and which results in the city working with Triple J to find an appropriate place for its proposed gun shop and shooting range. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam Chadbourne?
Good evening, Council. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here. So I wanted to talk about, I think it's 5C or something like that. It's the Centennial Square application for streeting. So I spoke at Planning Commission, and Planning Commission did postpone this a week and change it slightly. The result is still very disappointing and doesn't give us the city impact, the community impact of this proposed change, and isn't the right solution. And the reason for that is the floor area ratio is related to the lot size. And by making both these lots the same zoning, no matter what it is, you have increased the possibility of a higher, bigger building on the combined site. And these folks sound great. They've got a great concept and really good intentions. So that's not the issue here. The issue is the city is in it for the long term, and you heard from the previous two speakers that the city has failed utterly, and I'm going to attest to this. I've been watching. I've been here. I've seen Planning Commission and City Council over and over and over fail to deal with this issue. So the deal is that instead of the modernization and simplification of documents, which has been a horrible waste of time and abuse of the results, it's just horrible. Look at the zoning areas that are in transition. Other cities do this. It's not that hard and it's not rocket science. This area is one of them. Obviously downtown is. And then figure out what would be good zoning solutions. Instead, application by application, the city is being destroyed. So this is one of the areas that really should not be done this way. I'm going to point out that these residential uses here were rezoned from business. So now we want to make this possible to have a much larger business on, yet you've rezoned this for residential. That's not an appropriate, more intense commercial, B3, across from residential, which you rezoned. That's not appropriate adjacent use. And this shows the other uses around there. Those should be presented by staff. This is an illustration of FAR and how it gets more intense. And what I wanted to be able to read is Wikipedia has a criticism of FAR. Abdicating to floor area ratios, market forces is the opposite of aiming a community towards something more than the sum of its parts. FAR is a poor predictor of physical form and should not be used when the objective is to conserve and enhance neighborhood character.
That's your time.
So-
Thank you.
Council, please ask for more about this. Thanks.
Okay, that's who we have signed up. Is there anybody else who would like to come down?
Thank you all. Mike Price, District 3, Ridgeview Neighborhood. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the anniversary card. I've had my business in Littleton for a number of years, and I got a card signed by all of you in the mail last week, open for business, and I thought it was nice to be recognized, so thanks for that. We have a thriving commercial community here in Littleton. As part of that commercial community, what is enhanced by is our residential community. So I'm here to talk and just water my short-term rental garden tonight a little bit to make sure that this stays in front of you, and I know it is because we're going to talk about it tonight, or you are. But I appreciate the city pausing to take the time to really craft an ordinance that is sane, sensible, and works for all of the citizens of Littleton. So I'm thinking of two goals that I'd like to stress. The first one is preserve our neighborhoods. You know, we have a comp plan and we have neighborhood plans that have been made, crafted, and ratified by the city, and I think they work in many of the neighborhoods that we have. So ours in the Ridgeview neighborhood and in many of the R1 areas say no high density, no commercial, and short-term rentals certainly are high density and commercial. So as we're considering this going forward, let's continue to consider our neighborhood plans and preserve our neighborhoods. It's not one size fits all issue either. You know, what may work in some parts of the city may not work in other parts of the city. So in high density areas, maybe short-term rentals are fine, but in low density, quiet neighborhoods, let's try to keep them out of there or make them very restricted. The other thing is having gone to Planning Commission last week and listening to some of the pro short-term rental speakers, and our neighborhood is not anti-short-term rental at all. It's just we want to make sure that we have sane regulations. But let's make sure that we maintain the highest quality of short-term rental qualifications so that many of the speakers had talked about we are not regulated with respect to long-term rentals, but short-term rentals are regulated. In many of the areas around us, the requirement is for owner occupancy of X number of months a year, many times 9 or 10 months of a year that you must live there, and then you can rent your house out when you're not there, or you can rent rooms while you are there. I think that would go a long way towards preserving that kind of quality that we're looking for in Littleton. So thank you very much, and have a good meeting.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else? Okay, seeing no one, we will close public comment and move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items can be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion, and any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. Consent agenda ordinance 37 is an ordinance on first reading extending the temporary moratorium on the issuance of business and sales use tax licenses for short-term rental properties. Consent agenda item ordinance B is ordinance 35, and this is an ordinance on first reading to amend Title 10 of the Zoning Code, Section 10-17-4, regarding sign code definitions, and Section 10-17-6-2 to add definitions for human signs and rotating signs. Ordinance 32 is an ordinance on first reading approving an amendment to the official zoning map to change the zoning of a 5.05 acre known as 2717, 2727, and 2767 West Bellevue Avenue from B2 Community Business District to B3 General Business District, with a condition that the subject properties have a maximum floor ratio of 2:1. Resolution D is Resolution 58, actually, sorry, is a resolution approving the final plat for the 6705 South Santa Fe subdivision, case number FP 17-0004. And ID 18318 is approval of the September 18, 2018 regular meeting minutes. I need a motion, please.
Mayor,
Yes?
I move to approve A through E.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Driscoll, second. We have a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Our next item is general business, and under our general business, we have two resolutions. These are resolutions regarding amendments coming up on the November ballot. These are statewide amendments. And I just wanted to make a quick comment on this. It is common practice for elected bodies to adopt resolutions either supporting or opposing ballot issues that will have a direct effect on their community. And this can apply to local, state, or national issues. In this case, two statewide issues that are on the November ballot are on our agenda for these resolutions, approving one and opposing the other. In terms of opposition, issues of particular concern when considering opposition are issues that limit or remove our local control, issues that will have a direct and potentially crippling impact on the city's ability to operate, and issues that have the potential to severely impact our budget, which in turn will place a damaging burden on taxpayers. So I will read Resolution A, and I believe that staff, did you want to make a comment after reading of the resolution? Okay. Resolution 59-2018 is a resolution of the City of Littleton, Colorado, in support of Let's Go Colorado, a citizen initiative designated as initiative number 153 to appear on the ballot as Proposition 110 to increase funding for statewide and local transportation needs. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. I know that several council probably have some comments here about this particular proposition, but I will say from my perspective, and we've obviously just concluded our discussions with council about our own budget and our struggle with roads, capacity, street maintenance. And so I do believe that one of the resolutions, Proposition 110 specifically, does have an opportunity, if approved by the voters of the state, to dedicate some funds back to local government. And I think from my perspective, I do believe that there is some advantage to that. The other thing that I would note is that the Denver Post actually had a very nice article here about the two major propositions before the voters here in November, 109 and 110. And I would encourage people to read that because I do believe it's a fair and balanced approach to the two issues. So with that, Mayor.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments?
I have some comments.
Councilmember Elrod.
This is something that we talk about quite extensively at the Denver Regional Council of Governments. Obviously, with one of its mission and scope of work is to set up the infrastructure for our state, but more importantly, within our region. The arguments for 110 within Dr. Cog, and I support it as well, is the critical component of 110 is that it gives authority to the local, at the local level, so that both at the local and at the state level we're able to invest in infrastructure, and that's a very important factor. The other important factor is that while there is a sales tax increase, that has a termination date that ends after 20 years. The intent of that is to be able to get bonding up front so that the work can start right away, but there is an end to it, and that's another very key element to this. So I would highly encourage us to support this resolution. I think it's exactly what is not only for the state, but most importantly also for us locally, that we can engage, have a seat at the table, and make those decisions for us locally. One more point that I'll make, given the 110, 109, maybe discussion that's going on out there. 109 actually has no projects right now that are for Arapahoe County. So that's an important distinction that was also made and why this local authority is important for us.
Any other comments or questions? I just have a quick comment. I agree with Councilmember Elrod in terms of the regional support for this. Metro Mayor's Caucus has been very active also in supporting this. It is a statewide solution to a mounting problem. This has been a probably close to 10 years, and some may even say longer, effort on how to find a appropriate way to try to help fund our ailing infrastructure throughout our entire state. Sales tax has been considered, different variations of that. Increasing the gas tax has been also, and it has been all over the board, and there's been a ton of polling done and a ton of outreach and an awful lot of reaching out into different communities as to what people felt would be most appropriate. And it came back fairly overwhelmingly that people are very much tired of the transportation problems. They understand that they are underfunded, and so this has received some support in that regard. The city will be a beneficiary in the millions of dollars. The county is also a beneficiary of this in the millions of dollars. And there is a multimodal component to this, which is very important. We've not had those kind of components before. Multimodal will be, it really is something that needs to continue to be built out and planned for. So I will be supporting this. If there's any other questions or comments, I will call for motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution of the City of Littleton, Colorado in support of Let's Go Colorado, a state citizen initiative designated as Proposition 110 to increase funding for statewide and local transportation needs.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Okay, Resolution 60 is a resolution opposing Amendment 74, an attempt to amend the Colorado Constitution to limit state and local government services at a high cost to taxpayers. And I have a few comments I would like to make on this particular amendment. I would ask Council that we pass a resolution to oppose this amendment. We have here yet another amendment to our state constitution that was drafted by out-of-state interest. The amendment would require just compensation if product or if property has a reduced fair market value based on a government law or regulation. Truth is, our state constitution already allows for this. This amendment pushes the envelope to the extreme. It has a low trigger point and there's no flexibility. All interpretation will be left to the Colorado Supreme Court. An argument should be made that this amendment does not even consider the exceptions outlined in the United States Constitution. In addition to the extreme damage that will be done to budgets, municipal budgets, it also threatens property rights, as the impact to the right to rezone your property now becomes a liability for your city. This is not a case of unintended consequences. The negative consequences of this amendment are intentional and deliberate. This is one of the most dangerous amendments we have seen on the ballot in a very long time. Bottom line, this amendment puts our local budget at extreme risk, and the large payouts it would require will decimate our local budget and consequently reduce city services to minimums that we cannot even imagine. There's no need to take this extreme measure for a system of compensation that has worked for years. It's an overreach, it's an overtake, with complete disregard for the burden it will place on our cities and our taxpayers. Council, I urge passage of this resolution to oppose Amendment 74. Any other comments or questions? Okay,
I have a comment. I want to share some stats that were shared with me. Again, at DRCOG, this is another one that we're talking about quite a bit. And this is really what kind of brought it home of what can happen. A similar measure was passed in Oregon. Within a 3-year period, 7,000 takings claims were filed against local and state government, worth nearly $20 billion. $4 billion was paid out in claims before voters repealed the measure due to concerns about bankrupting local and state governments. So that's that's a reality. It's not just a risk or potential. It's a reality. Again, similar of what happened in Oregon, and they, after those numbers, they had no choice but to turn it back. Just not sustainable.
After spending billions.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Schlechter?
Yeah, I also think that this amendment is dangerous and unnecessary for our local government, so I definitely fully support this resolution to oppose Amendment 74.
Any other comments or questions? I need a motion.
I move to approve the resolution opposing Amendment 74, an attempt to amend the Colorado Constitution to limit state and local government services at a high cost to taxpayers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. You ready to vote?
Too slow, Pat.
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, Council, that concludes our business. We will move to comments and reports. Councilmember Elrod?
Well, thank you for the vote tonight on both of those resolutions. I will, in fact, share this with the...
I'm sorry, what did I do?
City manager.
Skip the city manager. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I was just mixing it up a bit.
No worries, Mayor. I'd be more than happy to go at the end.
Sorry, this doesn't shuffle.
Do you have a report, city manager?
I do. Just two brief issues here. One is that the council here a couple of weeks ago had asked that staff kind of report back with a memo here kind of explaining the grant that we had acquired here for putting in the pedestrian signal on Federal Boulevard. That memo will go to council here. Our intent is by the end of the day tomorrow. I just want to give you kind of the short version of that. That particular grant was applied for and obtained before the fatality that we had on that boulevard, and it was specifically oriented around the school. And so that is the constraint of the grant. It is for the school. But we'll explain that in much more detail here and make that memo here public. The other thing I wanted to mention is that a couple of weeks ago, the council also passed a resolution kind of supporting our U.S. Congress to pass legislation necessary and to continue with the Federal Land and Water Conservation Fund. Unfortunately, our Congress did not approve it. And so that fund, that grant opportunity is now gone. So I just wanted to simply report on that. That is my report. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney?
No report, other than I'm glad to be back, and we have a number of things that will be coming up.
Thank you. Now, Councilmember Elrod.
okay. I was just simply wanted to say thanks for approving both of those for the city of Littleton to take a position on those. I will be sharing that at Dr. Cog tomorrow to let them know that as a city we are supporting 110 and opposing 74. This will go to a vote of Dr. Cog as well on October 17th for, again, the same intent with support of 110 and opposition of 74. The other thing is I wanted to thank Mark, staff, and everyone involved in getting the town hall meeting this week. I think it's great timing, another opportunity for outreach and information. Unfortunately, I have my daughter's honor roll ceremony, so I can't be there. But thank you for doing that.
Councilmember Fay.
May I ask the city manager a question?
Yes.
Can you tell us, is there a likelihood that a crosswalk would be put in at the area of that fatality, or is that a closed issue?
It is not likely that we would be putting in a crosswalk at that exact location for multiple reasons, and I think that the memo by staff will help add clarity to that.
Okay, thank you. My report, we had District 3 citizen meeting, the fourth one this year, on Saturday, and we had about 25 citizens there. A number of them were new to this meeting, so that's good that we're pulling in new people. The topics that we discussed were short-term rentals and the Triple J Armory. No surprises, any of those, and the possibility of a tax increase or mill from South Metro. I want to say that people were lovely. Everybody behaved beautifully. We actually had fun with this stuff, which was kind of amazing. And then afterwards, we had a guided tour by Sue Ellen, one of the museum curators of the 2 historic farms. That was about an hour and a half long. You could leave whenever you were ready. And I didn't know, but normally there are not tours for anyone. So we had a very special situation of having a tour. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Schlechter?
A couple items to note. Last night I attended the museum board meeting. There are a couple things coming up on the calendar there. It's the 46th annual Friends of the Littleton Museum Craft Fair this Saturday, October 6th from 9 to 4, and they expect somewhere between 15 and 18,000 people to attend that. Also coming up the following week is the Harvest Festival on October 13th at the museum. It's from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. They're expecting another 8,000 to 10,000 attendees there. And then finally, the Walking with the Dead event is going to be held on 2 nights, October 19th and 20th at 7 to 10. Tickets are on sale now, and tickets must be purchased in advance and are $5. Next, I had the good fortune to attend the Growing Water Smart Conference put on by the Sonoran Institute in Keystone with a couple of staff members last week with the goal to incorporate water resources into our comp plan, along with rivers and creeks, Denver Water, South Platte, Water Renewal Partners. Was there with the Community Development Director, the Water Resources Manager, the Development Services Manager, Public Works, the Parks Manager from South Suburban, and the Acting Deputy Director of Business Administration and Communication from the South Platte Water Renewal Partners, and there was someone from Denver Water, which was good to be able to talk with them. So we had some good discussion, brainstorming about how to bring water to the forefront for the comp plan. It's something that we kind of haven't really thought about, but we have, water as a resource is limited in Colorado, and we also have a great natural asset with the river right here, and how to incorporate the river and potable water all one into the comp plan. And finally, South Suburban has some park openings coming up tomorrow and Thursday. There's one for Promise Park on October 3rd, 4:30 to 6, and then Stern Park, October 4th from 4:30 to 6, and pizza activities will be provided at both events. So I will be there with my kids, and I hope to see other people there playing on the swings. I see Pat there in his lederhosen swinging on the swings.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, last week I had opportunity to go on a tour of Globus. For those of you not familiar with Globus, they're a travel agency. They're located around South Federal there. Councilman Elrod, and I guess Councilman Fay was there. I think she had to leave a little early. And
Peggy.
Cole and Councilman Cole were there. Really a neat organization. I don't know if you're looking to bring travel plans, but they would be a great local resource to touch base with. Scott Nesbitt is the president and CEO, and they're the largest travel agency in the country, so right down the street from us. And then on Saturday, had the opportunity to be a judge at the Alley for Beautiful Scars. It was a fundraiser for Beautiful Scars, and the View House won that chili, green chili cook-off. There were 8 entries for the restaurants and 8 entries for the public. And Alex, I don't remember Alex's last name, but he won the private, the citizen cook-off. So a great function, a lot of fun. I hope some of you guys got a chance to get down there.
Councilmember Valdez.
All right, first of all, go Rockies. Let's have them win tonight. The second one, if anybody had a chance, I think it was the Littleton paper, the Littleton Independent, where a picture of Councilman Driscoll was wearing his lederhosen, so it's worth taking a look at. On a serious note, many of you may have noticed our parking lot is being painted tonight, so it's not convenient for everybody. For those of us that do have to walk a little farther because we can't park right up close, so we should be blessed that we can walk a few extra steps. I understand that there was some disgruntled person out there earlier giving a little heat to one of our workers out there. I think it's real important that most people do appreciate the work that the men and women do at taking care of the painting or the streets itself. And it's just unfortunate that we do have a few people that have to feel that they're being so inconvenienced that they have to let into somebody who's just trying to do their job. So, Keith, if you pass on to your folks, that I appreciate it. Mark as well, if you pass on, I appreciate everything they're doing out there. Thank you.
Okay, a couple things. We did have a meeting of the South Platte Working Group last week, and the east-west connection study that we're doing is moving along. The public outreach of that has been concluded. It was pretty extensive. They were really surprised at how many comments they got. They held a number of public open houses. We did throughout the Inglewood, Littleton, and Sheridan, and Arapahoe County. We did a lot of outreach through our websites and that type of thing. And so they got a lot of input, a lot of good comments, a lot of reasons why people use the trails, how they access them, why they don't access them. One of the things that really came out of it for me is that Littleton is really in a much better condition for east-west connections, even though they are not at peak. But because we have two underpasses that go under Santa Fe, so we have Littles Creek and we have Lee Gulch, and we have the bridge at the light rail station. So we have two that go under and one that goes over, and the other communities don't have any of those. So we have accessibility. It's not ideal. There are connection issues, and those are the things we're really looking at closely. And so now it's going to be the next phase, which is where they take the community input and they actually start putting it into a document as to making recommendations that come back. So that will end up back in front of council once it gets into a more final stage. We also had a conversation about the Chatfield call, the Chatfield Environmental Pool. Littleton is a contributor to the storage cost. We don't own any water in that environmental basin that they've created based on the expansion of Chatfield, but we own storage. So that does give us an opportunity to have a voice in how that's used. The intention was always that it would be used when we have really severely low water levels, like we do now, where there's, I think, 0 coming in. But it will be based on a number of things. And so we wanted to have somebody who represented our voice in that stakeholder group, because you can't have 40 people making a decision about when water gets called out of there. So we've got it's very designed, and we have asked Urban Drainage and Flood Control District to represent the South Platte Working Group's voice. They are the ones who have done the work in the river for us. They have the greatest understanding of the whole water mechanics of that. So that will be going, that letter has gone to the Greenway Foundation requesting that Urban Drainage be our partner there. We have also then begun working with the facilitator, and we have begun work on the priority list that we had talked about for the parks, trails, and open space. I also wanted to mention that we did have our Arapahoe County Mayors, Managers, and Commissioners meeting. Two things came up there. One, the challenges that we're going to be dealing with in the very near future with the FCC, with the FAA, just as bad as the FCC, and the FAA changing flight patterns into Centennial and flying planes over Littleton at very low altitudes because they're coming into land, et cetera. So they're kind of doing what the FCC is doing with the other issue that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. We don't care. We're the feds. We can do what we want. So we have an opportunity to get very engaged in this. Folks at Greenwood Village right now, Cherry Hills Village are taking a very high activity role in this, and so we are scheduling a presentation to council in December that will give you guys kind of where things stand, what we can do. It's going to be a substantial regional effort. We know that the folks in the north aren't going to be that concerned about what's happening down here in terms of air travel, but it's going to become, I think, a pretty big deal for us to start paying attention to. So we will have that presented, and just wanted to share that that's coming down the pike. Also for the community, the Thursday evening, this Thursday at 6:30, we will have our second telephone town hall. City Manager, would you mind giving a little bit of information on the content for that, and then also how people can access that? Because they can come in person, or they can go online or on the phone.
Thank you, Mayor. You covered a pretty good piece of it right there. But yeah, we are focused here on the South Metro Fire Rescue ballot measure here for inclusion into their district, as well as the council's action that you took earlier in the year to couple with that the funding here for street maintenance. So we're going to take on both those subjects, as well as the ballot measures here that we have for our charter, city charter. So we're taking on all those subjects here on Thursday night. And yes, you can access that through a telephone. You can access that through social media. And this is our second run at one of these telephone town halls. I think that the first one we had a little about a year ago, quite honestly, in my estimation, was a great success. We had, I think, over 600 people involved with that one alone, which way surpassed anything that beyond our expectations. So we're hoping that we can do that again. It's a little bit of a learning curve for us, but we're pretty excited to do it. And quite honestly, it's kind of fun. So I do encourage people to participate at those levels. They can certainly attend here at the council chambers, because this is where we're going to hold it here this Thursday.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no other business, we are adjourned at 7:11.
Wow.